This is 3.4, composition of trig values. This is non-calculator. Okay, so we're going to be finding angles here. When you've got an arc raised to anything, that means that you're going to be looking for an angle. And then when it has just a plain trig function, that means you're going to be looking for a ratio. That's your exact values. So the first thing I'm going to do is find my parentheses. And I know that sine is on the side and it's positive, so I'm going to build this on the top. Opposite over adjacent is opposite over hypotenuse. And then use Pythagorean to find my missing side. That's going to be 2 root 6. Now, realistically, I don't know this angle. It's not a 30, 60, 90, or a 45, so I'm just going to put theta there. But I have found my angle here. So the next thing I'm going to do is do secant of this angle. And secant is hypotenuse over adjacent, so that's going to be 7 over 2 root 6. And you can rationalize or leave it as is. All right, the next one, again, anytime you have raised to the -1, that means to find an angle. And if it's plain Jane, that means you're going to find a ratio, which is what I did over here. I found a ratio. Find your parentheses first. Secant is opposite of cosine, and that's on top, and it needs to be negative. So I'm going to build on the left side. So this is going to be -2. Let's see. I'm sorry, hypotenuse over adjacent. This is going to be the root 5. Again, I don't know this angle, but I have built the triangle. So let's do cotangent of this missing angle. That's going to be -2 over root 5. And again, you can rationalize or leave it as is. All right. Again, this means to find an angle. I'm labeling it every time so I know. And this plain Jane means to find a ratio. So my ending answer should be a ratio. Okay, tangent is on the side. And that should be built on the bottom. Opposite over adjacent is going to be 5 over 1, and the negative is going to fall down here. Pythagorean, this is going to be root 26. Once again, I don't know this angle. So I'm going to say cosecant of this angle, and cosecant is ho, so that's going to be root 26 over 5, and then I'm going to have a negative there. Okay, sine, that's just plain Jane sine, so that is a ratio. So the first thing I'm going to do is find a ratio. My ending answer should be an angle. So that should be degrees there. Okay, now because I'm starting in radians, my ending answer should also be in radians. So the first thing I need to do is find a ratio or an exact value. So I'm going to graph this. Sine is -pi over 6. And remember, when you're graphing that, you're going this direction. So -pi over 6 is right here. If you remember that, that's -30 degrees. So if you set up your ratio, that's going to be -1, that's 2, and that's root 3. So this ratio right here, if I redraw or set it up, that's going to be arc secant of, in order to do sine, that's opposite over hypotenuse, so that's going to be -1 over 2. Now I'm going to find this. I found the ratio, which I plugged in. Now I'm going to find the angle. So secant is going to be, if you notice, sometimes I'm going to have to draw more than one triangle, and that's what I'm doing now. Secant is going to be on the top, and it's negative over here. So let's draw that triangle. Secant is hypotenuse over adjacent, so this is hypotenuse, and this is adjacent. All right. So if you notice, your hypotenuse is shorter than this, and this cannot happen. So I'm just going to go ahead and stop here and say this is undefined, since this cannot happen at all. Have an angle, and we have a ratio. So the first thing we need to do is find our ratio. Graph 4pi over 3, which is going to be in the third quadrant. That's going to be a 60-degree angle. And this is going to be 2 root 3, and this is 1. So this is root 3 over 2. This is what's inside your parentheses now. So I'm going to take arc sine of this. And again, I'm going to check with all students take calculus to see if this needs to be negative. And it does need to be negative. Now I need to take arc sine of this. I'm going to find an angle now. So arc sine of this. So I now need to think of my restrictions, and this is going to be in the bottom quadrant or in the fourth quadrant. Draw my triangle again. So this is opposite over hypotenuse. This is negative with a 1 here. So it looks like I'm going to have a 60-degree angle here. So my final answer is negative pi over 3. Secant, this is going to be a ratio. And my first thing I need to find is an angle. So let's graph root 5 over 2. And I need to think of my restrictions. And this is opposite of sine. So this is going to be on the side. And it's going to be on the bottom. So in the fourth quadrant, secant is ho. So hypotenuse is going to be root 5. Opposite is going to be 2. And I need to have a negative somewhere. So it looks like, oh, this is a 5, sorry. 5, and this is 2. Looks like my negative needs to be here. Using Pythagorean, this is going to be a 1. So this is my angle. So I need to now find secant of that angle. So secant is hypotenuse over adjacent. So my answer is going to be root 5. And the last thing down here says if you have arc sine and sine of x, your answer will be x. Only if your restrictions are from negative 90 to 90. And this is true for any trig function that you have. Okay, come to class with questions.